Hello, welcome everybody to tonight's Council Member Information Briefing session. Today we'll be talking about the Library Opening Hours Survey and also the Toy Library proposal, but I'd just like to start off with the acknowledgement. So the Town of Gawler acknowledges that this land we meet on today is the traditional lands for the Kaurna people and that we respect their spiritual relationship with their country. We acknowledge the Kaurna people as the custodians of the Adelaide region and that their cultural and heritage beliefs are still as important to the living Kaurna people today. Excellent. Thank you very much for having me here this evening. I've got a couple of members from the library coming along as well as Nikki from the Toy Library. So we'll start off talking about the opening hours survey and then we'll move into the Toy Library. So we'll get started. Bear with me for a moment. So I'm sure you're all very, very aware, but we're a quick library snapshot, and although we're almost finished this financial year, not quite, I thought I'd do the 2023-24 year. So you can see borrowers, they fluctuate every month because as people don't use their cards, they get knocked off the system and as new ones come on. But we have around 5,200 borrowers a month. In the previous financial year, we had just under 100,000 total loans. 76-ish thousand total visitors between the two branches. On average, people use the PCs for about 354 hours each month on the public computers. We delivered 218 total programs with over 3,000 attendees, and we delivered on average 233 items every month to our homebound customers. We do have a library strategic management plan. It's getting a little old now. It was adopted by Council in 2016 with 8 key areas of focus, which you can see there. And the last one, that was before Heritage split off and became its own business area before the Civic Centre redevelopment. So not so relevant anymore, although we do work with them on programs and other partnerships. But that one, about 10 years now, it's time to do an internal review. We won't be getting consultants for that one. That would just be an internal update for that. Sometime towards the end of the year. So first up, we're going to talk about the library opening hours. We've had the same library opening hours since February 2016, and that was when the Civic Centre reopened, or opened after the redevelopment, I should say. Sorry. So obviously the Civic Centre is our main library branch that's open 44 hours a week, and Evanston Gardens is our part-time branch. So whilst the Civic Centre was being redeveloped, we relocated there temporarily and it was full-time for that duration, but then we moved back to part-time hours and we surveyed customers about what the best opening hours would be. We're right next to a school, so it's important for us to have some after hours, after school hours, so children and their families can attend, but we're also near the Hillier Residential Village and younger families who prefer the early morning. So this was an attempt to be a combination of the two. But anecdotal feedback has always been that it's a little confusing. People struggle to remember when it's open because it's not consistent hours, it's not the same each day. And over the few years that we've been open here, we've decided it was time to review. So we decided to do a survey, just asking our customers about the library opening hours at each branch, seeing what works for them, what doesn't. We did that in October and November late last year, and we had 339 responses, which we were really happy with. Now, I have given you a copy of the full survey if you want to look through as we flip through, but I'll just quickly go through the survey questions. Are you a resident of the Town of Gawler? Most yes, which is good. Do you currently use or visit the libraries? Because obviously we want people who do use it, but it's always good to, if possible, get people who don't use it and tell us why they don't. The eternal struggle in library surveys. What is your main reason for visiting the libraries? Borrowing and then attending programs or events were the big two, but borrowing is clearly the leader there. But lots of other reasons. Which library do you mainly visit? Gawler Civic Centre Library was leading the field there, which is not surprising given it's the main library branch with more opening hours, but a fair few visit both. How often? And weekly, fortnightly, monthly was the leader of the pack there, in that order. And then we divided the rest of the survey up into 2 sections. One was about just Evanston Gardens, although some people answered for both, and then the next section was just about the Civic Centre. So these questions are just relating to Evanston Gardens. How satisfied are you with the opening hours, which are listed there? And neither satisfied nor dissatisfied, obviously the leader, but more people were dissatisfied or very dissatisfied. Some are satisfied, but you can see nothing is overwhelmingly positive about that one. And then, which days of the week do you prefer to visit the Evanston Gardens Library? Monday is interesting as a response because it is our quietest day of the week, every single week. So this one was interesting. At the bottom of the slide where I've got see handout for written responses, customers could fill out and free type their responses. So there's some extra detail and feedback in those questions. What time of day do you prefer? Just seeing whether mornings would work or afternoons or all day. And there was a little more preference for all day and then morning as the leader. But interestingly, our afternoons are our busiest times. So it doesn't always match up with what's happening. And so this was a question we were really wanting to get feedback on. We're currently open 3 hours a day, 5 days a week. Would people prefer to us to keep that and be open more days over the week, but for less hours, so 3 hours a day? Or would they prefer a full day, but less days of the week? Overwhelmingly, the answer was other, and that was open all the time. So can't please everybody, but it's nice to see that the demand is at least theoretically there for the library to be open more. And there were a lot of typed responses in that one if you read through for question 9. And then question 10, we asked customers what their preferred opening hours would be, and they could type whatever they wanted. And if you look through for question 10, there are a lot. Some would like 24 hours or open till midnight, all the things, which would be great if we could do, but obviously that's not possible. But there was no clear, everyone wants this day, everyone wants that day. It was very much an all over the place, depending on their personal circumstances. Question 11, there's been a few libraries in South Australia which have gone to the 24/7 or after hours access model. Some like a gym and some have a security guard for a certain number of hours after the library closes. And we think that's something that could work quite well for our facility. So we just asked what the interest in that would be, and a fair amount of people were interested. But you can see through the comments they want a bit more information about how that would look. But this was just garnering possible interest. And then just a whole heap of general comments and feedback for Evanston Gardens, so that's all included in the handout. Should you like to read that? Then we moved on to the Civic Centre Library, same questions basically. Unsurprisingly, given we're open a lot more hours here, people were a lot more satisfied, so majority very or satisfied, which is good. Pretty much an even spread with Saturday as the leader for what days people prefer to visit. So that was good. What time of the day? Morning, afternoon, all day being the leader, but morning is a quite close second there, and that's probably backed up by the stats. We do get the most people in the morning, pretty much every day of the week. Their preferred opening hours, most of it, comments were people were pretty satisfied because it is open, but there were a fair few people who said, I work full-time, I can't access the library. Or even if I work full-time, if my kids have sport on a Saturday, they can't access the library. So again, it's that accessibility issue. And we asked the same question, would people be interested in access to the library during unstaffed hours? Yes, again, people were interested in that. And then just general comments or feedback. So that is a very, very quick overview, but I thought it would be good to have some discussion. We're really keen to get your thoughts and feelings. Obviously, customers would love us to be open all the time, and we would be too, but we're a very small team, and there's no extra resources coming to us. So if we do change the opening hours for one or both of the branches as a result of the survey and the feedback, it needs to be done within our existing allocated resources, which means that needs to be either a reallocation of the same hours that were currently open or potentially a slight increase, but any increase obviously comes with a possible reduction in programs or other activities. So there's always that trade-off that we need to make. Changes at one branch would obviously impact the other. And again, through the survey, the issue of accessibility came up. If you work full-time, it's very hard to access either library, so we're very conscious of that. So, for Evanston Gardens, there was no day or time that was a preferred leader that people said, yes, I would love you to be open at this time. However, the main themes that came through were consistency. They find it really hard to remember when we are open because the hours change from morning to afternoon, and they would just like to be able to go, oh, this day, this day, this day, at this time, they're open. So that was one theme, plus an after-hours return shoot, so they would like that. And Civic Centre generally more satisfied with the current opening hours, but for us, our late night is 6 p.m. close. We're very, very quiet from 5 till 6. It's very quiet, but we're thinking perhaps the 6 p.m. is not late enough, but then how late would we need to stay open if people were coming home from work? Say you work in the city, what time would we need to stay open to for you still to be able to access us? So that's sort of a challenge that we have. And the 24/7 concept for both libraries, that's something we're really interested in exploring. Obviously, this building, the Civic Centre, is a 24/7 building already. People have access to the Tertiary Hub, people have access to the Gawler Club, the Business Innovation Hub. We could facilitate that for the library as well. We'd obviously need processes and a new door or a way to get into the library with a swipe card, but that's something we would be interested in exploring. But yeah, I just wanted to get your thoughts or any discussion about the library if community members have said to you that they can or they can't access it, or what would be a preferred time to be open. Councillor Davies. And I will take notes, so please forgive me while I'm scribbling away.
Oh, there we go. So I just had a question around the Evanston Gardens Library. What are your stats on the actual times and days that people visit the most?
Yes, Tuesdays and Wednesdays, the busiest. Mondays, the quietest. We get around, on average, around 430 visitors a month. Fluctuates depending on how many weeks in the month, that sort of thing. But Tuesdays, Wednesdays, definitely the busiest. Thursdays, medium. Mondays are very quiet. Yeah. Yes.
Okay. With your programs, how do you assess the success of those programs?
So there's a variety of measures we use. Obviously, attendance is one of them if we get the number of people that we were planning to attend. So if we want a smaller session, like a craft session, obviously we don't want 100 people to attend. We want to keep it smaller. But if we have a bigger author event, we might like a lot of people, or an Easter play in the park, we would want more people. So attendance is one. Verbal feedback, whether people say they've really enjoyed it. If it's the kind of program that we're running multiple times, such as story time or a toddler tales, are people coming back? Are we getting people returning each week? So a few measures, yeah. Yes.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Just with the 24/7 library concept,
Yep.
what does that actually look like in other libraries that are doing that?
Yeah, there's a few different examples. Prospect, for example, they are not 24/7, but they have extended hours. So the library staff leave at 5:30, they close up their computers the way you normally would at the end of the day, and they leave the library, and a security guard comes on site. The library doors remain open, and customers can stay there until 8:30 or 9 o'clock. And then the security guard sort of sweeps people out and locks the doors and leaves. The Kadina Library is pretty much 24/7 access, so the customers that want that, they sign up, they go through a special after-hours use induction, they pay as a deposit for their swipe card, the same as staff have, obviously with 2 restricted areas, and then once the library doors close, they can swipe in at any time and stay there for as long as they need, get their books, do their study, and then leave. They find that pretty much no one stays after midnight, but it's been consistently popular since they started it. Yeah. And it's just like a 24/7 gym, so they have CCTV cameras, you swipe in, so you have an electronic register of who is in the building, and they swipe out as well, so you can see the timestamps for when they leave. So, and they were really worried that people might sleep in the library, or someone might take advantage of it, but they haven't had any issues. So, yes. Oh, sorry. Is that?
There we go. So just in regards to the Evanston Gardens hours again, so it seemed like there was some support for fewer days with more hours. I guess what were your thoughts on that as compared to the same number of days but maybe lining up the hours
The
more
hours?
closely? Yeah.
The trick with keeping 5 days and lining up the hours is which hours. If you're doing your early literacy or your programs for older people, they tend to prefer the mornings, but we're right next door to the primary school and we get a lot of families and primary school children coming after school. So if we aligned with early morning hours, that cuts out a whole segment of our community that can come. If we bump everything to the afternoon, that's a lot more difficult, particularly for early literacy programs when parents or grandparents or caregivers are wanting to take the younger children out in the beginning of the day. So neither solution is perfect. If we just went to all mornings or all afternoons, I mean, we could make it work, but I think all mornings would definitely cut out all the school after school visitors, and I wouldn't be keen to do that considering that's our busiest time anyway. Yes.
Thank you. I really like how you're asking for our feedback, but to be completely honest, I'm sort of probably going to rely on the great work already that you guys do to be able to come back with a couple of different options. Personally, in my own personal life, I've got a 7-year-old that's really starting to get into reading and listening through. I'm sort of going, geez, actually, I need to get her signed up and bring her in. And then I try to put myself in the parents' shoes side of things. I do know that my daughter accesses the school library for the loaning of books and the like, but just being able to provide those opportunities through the school holidays and weekends, if that reading appetite really starts growing, which is something we certainly want to promote. The discussions, I guess, you asked about what feedback we're receiving. I probably haven't helped you too much by really scrutinising some of the feedback, but everything that I've received is, it's really great set out, everyone's friendly, we find the Civic Centre in particular, I do get a lot of good feedback in it's a really state-of-the-art facility, and that's not to take away from the Evanston Gardens facility at all. I just think some people that are maybe providing the feedback actually have found their home here and haven't had any reason to explore another facility. The return shoot, I noticed that you put up some of that sort of makes a lot of sense to me for people in that area, and not only for the people in the area that are there now, but into the future, because if you are having those restricted hours side of things and people are getting confused, they have the ability to come in and return the books, and that can be a consistent, which would be interesting to see what that did to the feedback on, well, I never know when you're open, so I can't return my books, and
Yeah.
But yeah, look, I'm really sorry I can't give you a definitive direction because it sounds like you might be working on some models behind the scene with what you guys have experienced anyway, and I'm really sort of keen to support them come through when we see the options and why you're thinking that way.
Yeah, we are
leaning
towards Evanston a couple of days a week, full day, so 9 till 5. We could fit 2. That's kind of within 2 days a week would be 16 hours, which is we're open 15 now, so that's a slight. We could manage that. Stretch would be 3, and we think that would be better for accessibility, but we would really need to interrogate the roster and the programming
And
level
resources.
and resourcing to see if that's something sustainable.
So is there and this might be a question to yourself and Chris, is there a process where you go, hey, I reckon this could work, we'll try it with our current resources so that you're ready for, a financial year cycle to say, hey, this is the measures that we've implemented, here's our trial data, here's our survey, and this is it really working. But for now, to really capitalise on it, it might require an extra return shoot, or it requires a 24-hour access trial. I don't know, but is that some of the thinking behind next
Yes,
steps?
Yeah, so next steps would be a council report to, based on the feedback from here, help determine the trial that we'd like to do, and then it would be a council approval to do that trial for whatever period, and then a further council report at the end of that to see if we want to keep with those trial or modify it a little bit. Return sheet would be great. That might be a budget bid. Everything library is more expensive than you think it's going to be. And the 24/7 concept, that would be a detailed investigation for a future year's budget bid, because there's some infrastructure requirements and CCTV security requirements which would require some detailed costings, and models which would require some detailed thought. So, yes, sorry, Councillor Hughes.
Thank you. I do like the 24/7 model that Kadina's got, and the way they induct everyone, and the local paper and everyone else in the communities behind that. And I think they got some grants and things like that from different areas to actually set that up, which was really good. In the past, I think Evanston Gardens has had other sections of council work from that. Does that help in any way, or did you get any feedback about those extra services? Because that's something, you know, the branch officers of other councils have done in the past too, to try and extend that opening of the library.
The other council teams that were working there weren't doing any of the library service stuff, so we had an area of the library floor essentially sectioned off for the community safety team, and that was fine, except when there were some rather sensitive regulatory conversations going on whilst the library was open and there were customers in the floor, because obviously they deal with compliance and dog registration expiations, that sort of thing. So sometimes there was that, I guess, tension between confidential council worker conversations or with customers that were on the phone to those people or who had come in to visit them, versus just being an open library floor. So yeah. And during COVID, when the library was closed to the public but we're still doing click and collect, some other team members were based there as all the council teams split up and were sent to different sites. Yep. Yeah, yes.
Yeah, it's just you know, what other councils have done in the past with other branch officers is, you know, to try and, it sort of means that they're like a general customer service officer as well as library, just to keep those hours going and justify the extra hours. And that's what they've done at other branches. I know there is issues, especially if at rate time with money and things like that, but it is something just to try and extend those opening hours that they've done.
Yeah, we can explore that, definitely. Any other? Oh, yes, Councillor Solomon.
Just two quick questions. With the question 9 on the survey, I'm just struggling to understand what's sort of being indicated there, because is the question trying to ask with the first one whether people are happy with the current more days but less hours?
Yeah.
And then the second one is indicating a shift to something else. Because
Yeah.
when I read through, especially the other responses, it seemed that a lot of people who were happy with the current model put other rather than the first one. And that's how I initially read it as well, was that status quo is the other section, and then the first one is still a change, but it's a move to more days or weekends, etc.
So other is if they had a different preference, so whether they'd still like the 5 days a week access, even if it is only for 3 hours a day, so the current model, or if they would prefer a full day but less days of the week. So I'd rather it be open 9 to 5, 2 or 3 days a week, because I can fit it in better. And then other is if they had something different on top of that. So lots of people have said weekends or Saturdays or open late into the evenings. So if they had a different preference for what would they prefer to be the opening hours there.
Yeah, I guess I'm still a little bit unclear whether. So the other is the status quo option, or?
No, the status quo is the top one, the green one. So the library to be open more days for fewer hours, as it currently is. Yeah.
Because just looking through the. But when I read the police specifies. It seems that some people have put it under the other rather than the first one.
Yes,
And I read it that way initially as well.
Oh,
so
okay.
I'm just thinking we need to be careful with that, the answer to that question, because I'm not sure the data's come through in the way it was intended.
That one was a bit tricky to word the best way to get
Yeah.
the response. Yeah, I'm careful with the data. I'll just note that one down.
Just because I know it was something we're interested in looking at changing. The second one was just in regard to, for example, Cadena and some of the other models. I'm aware some organisations have, will buy a small licence to like an app that people can use on their phones, especially walking to and from a car park or, obviously the setup we've got here, it's not quite direct to get into the building. But are you aware of what other models might do and what those sort of licences look like and costs, etc.?
For essentially when you leave the building?
Yeah, also...
Security implications?
Yeah, so the ones I'm talking about are used both within and outside of the premises, but usually like a button you can press and either, depending on where you are, sometimes it's security, sometimes it notifies police, but it's especially useful when you're walking to and from a car, if you're not able to call the police in that situation. But just, I'm aware that some organisations use it and have a licence or some sort of relationship, but I'm not quite sure the details of that.
Yeah, the ones that I'm aware of, they don't have that. They have security measures within the building. So obviously the building is locked. Customers have a swipe card which would allow them access into the building. And then inside the building they would either have, it's common for, say, a disability access toilet to double as a panic room. So if there were an incident, you can lock yourself in the toilet and there'll be a button in there which, like an emergency button in the lift or a phone, takes you through to the after-hours security monitoring, or duress alarm, which will take you straight through to the police. Some just have portable duress alarms that the customers can wear whilst they're in the building. The idea being that obviously the library is closed and only people who have a swipe card and have gone through the induction process can enter the building. Obviously, you can't account for everything. Sometimes someone might rush behind you and push in through, but that can happen at any after-hours facility. So it's about that calculated concept of risk and what you're willing to do. But I don't know of any 24/7 libraries that have an app that a customer could then use back to the walk to their car or anything like that. And I don't believe we have that now for tertiary hub users or business hub users. So there is that element of personal risk at any sort of 24/7 facility. So, but that is something we could get quotes for and just see what the cost is like. Yes.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for your team for the information. Like the way you're going. I think the two-day option or 3-day, depending on what you can manage at Everston, would be good. Point out that there was, when that building was designed, there is a physical arrangement already for an after-hours shoot there. So, given how popular the one is here and how accessible, I'd look forward to being able to support that. I guess for the elected members, 12 years out, I just think at some point, and I know we're in a tough financial situation at the moment, we haven't given the library, and particularly Everston Gardens, much thought or much increase in budget. It was designed to service that whole area, and in the 12 years, although it was very much delayed, now we start to see some of those areas starting to develop. So in terms, perhaps, as somebody suggested earlier, a customer service point down there that can service people in that area, that might be something that we need to investigate. But I look forward to your reports coming back, and well done. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Does anyone else have any questions on opening hours before we move on to the toy library? No? Excellent. All right, we've got Sue. We'll just switch to another presentation. Sue's going to give a very brief overview of what a toy library is, and then we can open up to discussion about the report. So if you want, just flick through that one. Where did it go? Susie will bring it up. There we go.
Okay, Good evening, everyone. Before we follow into our toy library report, this is just a really quick overview of what a toy library is and the benefits of a toy library. So hopefully you've all read the report, the briefing report, and the proposal is about adding the LCI toy collection to the Gawler libraries. Just some background on the LCI Toy Library. It was established in 1976 in LCI Kindergarten, which if you do your maths as well as I do, that makes it 49 years old this year. It reopened in 2013 as a volunteer organisation, completely run by volunteers. And their current toy collection is valued at approximately $25,000 and consists of over 800 items. It's been self-funded from 2013 to 2025, running almost exclusively on funds raised from membership fees. And the same volunteer coordinator, Nikki, has been running it for that whole time and is now ready to move on to greener pastures and bigger challenges, but they have been unable to find a replacement coordinator, which puts the community of Gawler at risk of losing this resource. So, what is a toy library? For those of you who may not have stumbled across one before, at a toy library you can borrow from a vast array of well-made toys that have been designed to support your child's skill development and imagination. They provide quality educational items for loan. They're inexpensive, certainly in comparison to the cost of purchasing those toys. They principally cater for younger children, although some for slightly older children, but we're talking mostly preschool and then into primary school. They have a range of items covering all stages of growth and development and provide an opportunity to meet other caregivers, to share concerns, interact with others and make new friends. And they help parents and carers learn about the ages and stages of child development as well. This is a great slide showing the benefits of toy libraries. So you can see it's been divided into 4 sections. This is from Toy Libraries Australia. So reduced cost of living, which we know in the current cost of living crisis, a lot of families are being hit really hard and the toy library can really support them in this way. Less waste, so circular economy, sustainability. We're talking about less toys going, less plastic, basically going into landfill. Community connection, it's a soft entry point to other services. So we may, if we incorporate the toy library collection into our collection at Gawler Libraries, it gives us an opportunity to interact with families that we may not have reached otherwise. So that age-old conundrum that we have about how do we reach non-library users, this is a way for us to effectively do that. And of course, educational, so play-based learning, developmentally appropriate toys, all of those things. So why would someone join a toy library? We've sort of already covered it on some of those other slides, but basically they can borrow from hundreds of quality toys, expose their children to a greater range of play experiences, contribute to their children's development, save money by borrowing toys each week rather than buying them, reduce clutter, again, by borrowing toys and not having to store them at home, reducing toy waste to landfill, meeting other local parents, learning about ages and stages of play and development, and contributing to your local community. So there's definitely an opportunity for us to be open to more volunteers through the toy library. I'm not going to read this to you, but I'm going to let you read it. The next couple of slides are some feedback from current users of the LCI Toy Library. So this one's a long one, I'll give you a minute to get through that. Through this process and reading the feedback, we can see, Nikki, that you've built a fabulous community over the years and that the town, the community really appreciates everything that you've done. Just some more slides there, some more feedback. Interestingly, something that perhaps I hadn't thought of before I started this investigation is around grandchildren accessing the toy library, particularly if their grandchildren are visiting from interstate. They can just borrow some toys for the week or 2 weeks while they're down. And that opportunity, as mentioned in the bottom one, for parents to test out games and more expensive toys to see whether it is something that's actually worth the outlay. Try before you buy. And this is the last my last slide in the presentation. So again, it's just feedback for just to show the value of the toy library to the community and how much it's appreciated. I'm going to pass you over to Chia now to talk more about the briefing report.
Excellent, thank you, Sue. So hopefully you've all had a chance to read the report, but essentially we are proposing, and it would come back to council after feedback from this briefing session in a proper report to fully approve, but we are proposing to go further and accept the toy library and bring it into the Gawler Libraries collection. At the start, we were thinking, due to spatial requirements, we would only be able to house it at the Evanston Gardens Library. We have a little more space there, but recently we've been thinking it would be nice, if possible, to incorporate at least a small sample of the collection here, so that people who struggle to get to Evanston can at least see a bit of a teaser collection or come and borrow from here, but that would be a very small slice of it. The toy library, again, resourcing is very important for us, so it would need to be pretty much self-funded for it to come into the library. We believe that's possible. There would be an initial outlay of costs for us, and that would be the processing materials. So if we put things in bags, if we create tags, there would be that initial outlay. The Friends of the Library have generously offered to support that with a few $1,000s, which is what we think it would be. And then ongoing, as we bring new toys into the collection and we replace them and replace bags, that would be funded over the years through the membership fees. So we do think, apart from an initial outlay, which the Friends are happy to support, it would be funded by membership fees. So does anyone have any questions or thoughts? Yes, Councillor Kosh.
Yeah, I just want to confirm the setup fee. You said a couple of thousand. Is that all it would cost?
Yes, yes. So we, obviously the toys would be donated to us, so there would be no cost for that. A resourcing cost would be the staff time to catalogue, obviously. That's a fairly sizable collection for our staff to catalogue. But an actual outlay of costs, it would be more in the bags, the things that we would house them in, the tags that we purchase, that sort of thing. So that would be around $3,000 for the initial outlay.
Yeah, I suppose just really after that resourcing figure that you would need to actually establish it, your staff figure. It's not 1,000, not a couple of thousand, it's more than that.
No, the staff time is obviously significantly more.
You haven't got a figure yet for that?
No, we would have to time out how long it would take. We estimate it would be around 20 to 30 minutes to catalogue each toy. So then if you times that by 800, that would be what it is. But of course, you get faster as you go on. The first few take a while, and there's volunteer resourcing that we can bring into that. So we'd need to have, if the council members seem supportive, we'd do the full-on time investigation into that. Yeah.
And the other question is, do we charge the community for council services in the library?
No.
So this would be separate?
Yes. Yeah.
So why would we be charging?
Because currently the majority of our book stock is funded through a state government funding arrangement with the LGA, and they provide that funding to us on the proviso that we make the collection available to the entire state, so anyone can come in and borrow our books. That funding is not permissible to be used for toys, so we have to have a separate funding source, which is where the membership fee comes in to cover new toys being acquisitioned over the year. Otherwise, if you made it available for free, that is possible, but council would have to allocate a budget towards it. So the annual membership fee for Toy Library members stops council having to allocate more budget in the recurrent budget for it. Yep. Any other? Yes.
Thanks, Chair. I think, first of all, the concept of toy library is a fantastic concept, and I do want to thank Nikki and the team for their amazing work that they've done. And obviously, it would be so upsetting if this was to disappear from the community, as I think you and your team have recognised. So kudos, like this is a great initiative from the town of Gawler to actually go, hey, how can we come in and support a great local volunteer-based organisation and actually incorporate that into the wonderful work we're already doing. So from my point of view, I see no issues with it. I think it's a fantastic concept. I think while there is a few sort of details that, would need to be worked out. That's something I think we can trust you and your team to sort out amongst yourselves.
Yep.
But I do see that the work you're doing, this is very much a natural fit.
Yep.
It is different, but it is also loaning items and returning them. It is
Yes,
very
yeah.
similar to books. So, I think it's fantastic. And, personally, I think I see no issues.
Excellent. Okay. Any other? Yes.
Yeah, thank you. And I tend to agree. I think there's an opportunity here to, one, we don't want to lose the service. Two, depending on how you guys go, and I know Nikki's very passionate in this space as well, and I know she will be very keen to assist in, getting things on the feet. That's why she's having the conversations with you. She wants to, she doesn't want to see this disappear out of the town. It's a great resource. But, when we rely on our volunteers, and only our volunteers, we can get to a certain spot, but, we really need to thank Nikki for her service, because it is a great thing to provide in this day and age. And what I can see you guys running with is where I'm really excited as well, because you're going to be able to leverage the memberships in the areas as well, from the library membership that you have, from then the toy library membership that you're going to bring. I think organically you're going to see some number growth as well, and you're going to see that cross-pollination, I guess, of memberships grow. So, yeah, look, I'm really excited about the initiative. It does make sense to me personally. And yeah, if we can figure out, which it sounds like we're already doing anyway, figure out how you can do it within the internal, and it's a fee for service, because unfortunately we don't have that grant body, but I do know we're always going to be looking for opportunities. And it's not necessarily providing a brand new service for the town, it's just merely partnering with a great service already and just helping it grow to the next version of it.
Yes. Thank you. Yes, Councillor Hennessy.
Thank you. And yes, again, thanks very much for your investigation. I think it's great. I look forward to it. I think, as Councillor Koch says, we're going to need a good communication plan to explain this fee for service. But I think because people are very familiar with the service as well, I think there'll be a great understanding in the community. At least 3 generations of Gawler people have used this. My children, and I won't embarrass them by saying how old they are, but they were using it when they were 2 and 3 as well. It's really vital. We are very fortunate that it's continued with the support of the volunteers and the coordinator. Thank you. But it also has great support from all the educational organisations in this town, the Children's Centre, the Allied Health. It's an important part of that child development, and with the new federal government policy of bringing kindies down to 3 years old, it fits really nicely in what this town provides for its very young residents. So I look forward to the report. Please thank the Friends for their offer of standing up and support. I know they've been going for a long time, and both the time they volunteer and the funds they raise, it's to be very much appreciated that they've swung in strongly behind this. So again, we look forward to the report.
Thank you. Yes, Councillor Koch.
I like this proposal. Our kids used the toy library for a lot of years, and it was fantastic. Kids loved it. Margaret and I both loved it. I just did a quick calculation: 800 items times 20 minutes, and I've given a rough figure, and it's a bit over $10,000. I mean, that's not much really for the scheme of things. And then if it's funded, through the subscriptions, which it will have to be,
Yes.
I can't see any problems. Basically, thanks.
Yeah. And we do believe the toy library, I'm not sure if you've all visited it, it's in a very confined space, so purely for spatial reasons they've had to restrict the number of memberships they can have. Just by checking with other public libraries who have toy collections, and it's in the report, we believe the membership would only increase because most other toy libraries and public libraries have a lot more members than the current sort of 45 to 50 that the Gawler LCI Toy Library has. Yes, Councillor Sample.
Yes, very good. I'm sure that if you've got the application form, it sounds like Councillor Koch like to fill it out and join.
Sure.
But with the invent of the childcare centres in Gawler, you know, the big one up the top that's got a waiting list, and the one at Williston, and now the big new one just the other side of the bridge there, which was,
Yes.
you know, the doctor's surgery and everything. I mean, that one's huge. I've actually seen the plans for that one. Is that going to at all change the way people use the library?
We would have organisational relationships with the childcare centres. We do already with a fair few in our area. They would be more than welcome to become organisational members of the Toy Library, should they wish to. But we already have a pretty good relationship with them. We try to do outreach or get them to come in when possible. Obviously, not every childcare centre takes us up on that. But in general, I guess you could say more children in childcare. It does have an impact overall on early literacy programs. We've noticed with kids that come in, they come for about 6 months, while they're old enough to attend programs, parents are on maternity leave, and then they go to childcare. So we are not getting as many for that full right up till year grade reception sort of life cycle. So that is impacting some of it, but not that much. So. Any other comments? No? All right, well, thank you very much for your time this evening. I believe you have another item on the agenda. So if you would like to discuss it any further, feel free to contact myself and to have a chat, or David or Sue or Angie. We're all happy to talk about it. There'll be council reports for each item coming up in the next month or so. So yes, thank you very much for the opportunity to discuss this evening.
Council members, I'm conscious of time. We're almost at 9.